McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. Tender, juicy, and its own sauce. Would you look at that? Well, you can't see it, but trust me, it looks delicious. New McCrispy strips, now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
So you've got a business, but what about a brand? The difference? More of you. Wix gives you the freedom to create your website, own your brand, and do it on your own, exactly how you envisioned it. Experience limitless customization. Boost your creativity and efficiency with AI tools for every part of your business journey. Scale up with built-in SEO, e-com, and scheduling features. Put more of you in your business. Go to Wix.com and do it all yourself.
You know what makes every outfit look better? The right bra from Third Love. Their bras make it easy to ultimate cleavage, a smooth look, or even stop your shirt buttons from pulling. They make over 60 sizes, including half cups you won't find anywhere else, so you'll find your perfect fit. Third Love solves bra problems, or what they call broblems. Real women test every style they make. Comfort and support are guaranteed. So stop settling for bad bras. You deserve better. Get your problem solved today. Save $15 on your first order with code PODCAST15 at thirdlove.com.
Hi, everyone. This is Jillian with Court Junkie. Court Junkie is a true crime podcast that covers court cases and criminal trials using audio clips and interviews with people close to the cases. Court Junkie is available on Apple Podcasts and podcastone.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 308 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
Rest of my family is in Florida on vacation, so I'm just here by myself all week.
Just chilling?
Just chilling, watching movies and playing games and researching podcasts.
That's the life.
That's my life, for sure.
Door dashing.
And door dashing, yeah. I did make some chili spaghetti the other night.
You did?
Yeah. Well, that's one of my favorites.
Made it yourself?
Well, I used the canned Skyline.
Okay.
And then make my own spaghetti.
So you boiled some pasta.
I boiled pasta. You heat up the Skyline and pour the Skyline on, and then pour some shredded cheese on. Oh, yeah. That's good stuff.
Well, it's probably a lot cheaper than getting it delivered.
Or even going there. Sure.
Yeah,
I actually like it better, to be honest with you. All right, let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Ying and Xandro Tugas.
What's up, Tugas?
Cass in the OK.
There's the OK.
Angie Killen.
Hey, thank you, Killen.
Your mom's phone.
Oh, hey, Mom.
Karen Watkins.
What's up, Watkins?
Debbie Thornley.
There's Thornley.
John McCarthy.
Hey, McCarthy.
Laura Nicole Welsh.
Thank you, Welsh.
Micheline Kruger.
Hey, Kruger.
Alyssa Alvalar.
AA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Midian Corono.
What's going on, Corono?
Ashley Oldfield.
Oh, there's good old Oldfield.
Caroline B.
What's up, B?
Laurel Rickard.
Hey, Rickard.
Christina Lee.
Appreciate that, Lee.
Alyssa McBratney.
Big McBratney.
Derek Chmielewski.
Yeah,
I don't know if I've gotten that one right at all.
Yeah.
Mandy Stocker.
Hey, Stocker.
And last but not least, Erica Vanover jumped out at our highest level.
Wow, appreciate a lot.
Yeah,
Vanover.
Definitely. And if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Jess Plant.
Thank you, Plant.
Yeah, appreciate all the support we get. We had a great PayPal donation from Ann Kelly.
Well, thank you, Ann Kelly.
Gibbs, right now on True Crime All the Time, we have an episode out on William Mansfield Jr. He's a serial killer responsible for the deaths of at least 5 women and girls. But there's a lot of twists and turns in this episode. You know, Junior's a bad guy. Senior's a bad guy. His brother, his mother. I mean, there's suspicion on the part of a number of people. And what did they know? How could they not have known? So definitely check that out. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We're talking about the Brown family disappearance. In the summer of 1985, the entire Brown family disappeared from their home in Port St. Lucie, Florida. The Brown family, excluding the father James, have been missing for more than 30 years, despite the fact that James has confessed to their murders. So a little different for an unsolved.
It is.
But I think people will see kind of what's going on as the case unfolds.
Sometimes you can call it a unresolved.
Yeah, more unresolved than unsolved. Carolyn Brown was born on September 6, 1957. She was 27 years old when she disappeared. Carolyn would be 65 if she were still alive today. Carolyn was married to James Michael Brown for 10 years. James, in 1985, was 37 years old, so 10 years older than Carolyn. At one point, they both worked as teachers and lived in Port St. Lucie, Florida. James Brown earned a master's degree in child guidance from Florida Atlantic University. And Florida Atlantic University has been in the news big time lately. Their men's basketball team made the Final Four. I think I don't know what seed they were. They were a very high seed. I don't even know if they had ever won a game in the tournament before.
Really?
And they made it to the Final Four. It was kind of amazing.
Wow. And
And they lost on a last second shot to go to the finals.
so they might have went the whole way.
They could have, but they didn't. James and Carolyn had 3 children. Sheketah Michelle Brown was born on December 20th, 1974. Sheketah was just 10 when she disappeared. She would be 48 years old if she were still alive today. Barry Michael Brown was born on December 29th, 1978. Barry was 6 when he went missing. He'd be 44 if he were alive today. Brandon Mitchell Brown was born on December 19th, 1983. Brandon was just 2 years old when he went missing. He'd be 39 if he were still alive. So there's a couple of things that jump out at me about this. First, all 3 children were born very close on the same date in December.
Yeah.
So, that jumped out at me
All December
because
babies.
from the 19th to the 29th, you're spending a boatload of money, right, on birthday presents, and you have Christmas kind of sandwiched smack dab in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So budget wise, December is a very heavy month.
Yeah. A lot of birthdays and Christmases.
Yeah.
Going on
A lot
there.
of presents. And then the second thing, obviously, that jumped out at me is we're talking about 3 young kids here.
Yeah.
Brandon was only 2 years old. Barry was 6. Sheketah was 10. According to the St. Lucie News Tribune, James Brown once taught social studies at Lincoln Park Middle School. James worked at Lincoln Park for less than a year. The school personnel director described him as a very mild-mannered individual. Carolyn Brown taught at Chester A. Moore Elementary School. Carolyn was described as a very conscientious teacher who makes home visits to children.
So nothing unexpected being said about them.
No, I mean, we're not hearing that people had a problem with them. They thought they were bad teachers, bad humans, nothing like that. I do think a very mild-mannered individual is kind of a strange quote. I don't know when that came out, though, because obviously we're going to learn more about James Brown as we go along. The Brown family had been renting a house in Port St. Lucie for about 4 years. The police characterized the family as well-educated. Their acquaintances described them as loners. One neighbor told the St. Lucie News Tribune, "They never socialized too much. I never saw anyone go to their house." Okay. You could make that same comment, both of them, really about my wife and I.
I was getting ready to say that. Sounds like your house.
Yeah. I mean, we're both fairly well educated. My wife more so than I am. I wouldn't call us loners. We just don't go out a ton. And we don't have a ton of people over at our house. We're not throwing big bashes where, cars are parked all up and down the street.
No, that's not your thing.
We just kind of keep to ourselves. We do our own thing.
I'm lucky. I'm lucky you let me in here.
Now, I will say there's a lot of people that come to the house because of the amount of stuff that my wife orders online.
Well, they wear uniforms.
They do.
Yeah.
And they're easily recognized. James Brown's teaching certificate was suspended in 1983 when he pleaded no contest to attempted aggravated child abuse against his daughter and was sentenced to 3 years of probation. Sheketah's teachers notified welfare workers that she had welts and bruises on her body. She was put into the temporary care of the State Division of Youth Services after she told authorities her father was the one who caused welts and bruises. Okay, that doesn't sound good. I don't know to what extent, these welts, these bruises showed up. It must have been pretty extensive for the teachers to be concerned to the point where, they would call child services. Now, in 1983, a lot of us got spanked, sometimes with belts.
Well, we did.
I've said it before. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that's what happened. This does not sound like that to me. This sounds like it went way beyond any type of normal discipline, even as it happened back in 1983.
Well, it had to be. I mean, for the courts to give him a 3-year probation sentence, and on top of that, he loses his teacher's license for 3 years. That's pretty substantial.
Well, we said 3 years probation, but according to the St. Lucie News Tribune, his probation ended in December 1984. So it sounds like it was ended early, according to the paper. In June of 1984, James started a job as an interim 4-H agent at the St. Lucie County Agricultural Extension Office. The grant supporting this program expired after a year, and he was unemployed again. In April of 1985, James applied for a job as a probation officer in Fort Pierce. He was interviewed but not hired.
I think it'd be kind of hard to be a probation officer
when you just came off probation yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem like that would be a smart move to interview for that job. They're going to see your record. They're going to know that you recently were on probation.
They're going to say, you know what?
Maybe he thought, well, I have experience.
Well, maybe.
I don't know.
What? I'm an educator. I've been through that before. I've got some lessons learned. I'm going to share them with whoever I represent as their officer.
But I could also see why he was not hired.
Yeah.
Carolyn Brown was scheduled to come to work on August 18th, 1985, to prepare for the start of the new school year. And this is something I'm very familiar with, right? My wife's a teacher. Every year in the fall, things change as the school year approaches. She has to go into schools, got to get the room ready, got to start writing lesson plans,
right.
All that good stuff.
Start buying all those products.
Yeah, buying stuff out of her own pocket. On August 16th, 1985, the police announced that the Brown family had not been seen since sometime in mid-July. Carolyn's mother, Rosa Walker, told the police that her daughter regularly called her, but those calls stopped around July 15th. And I think, Gibbs, this is where we get into the area of patterns. They show up quite a lot in these unsolved cases. If Carolyn called her mom all the time on a regular basis, and then all of a sudden her mom stops getting those calls, that's out of the ordinary. That's breaking a pattern.
I mean, it's almost a month that has went by since their last communication.
Now, you and I don't always talk during the week, right? In between recordings. Unless we have something that we really need to discuss, we don't always talk.
Well, I can't get past your virtual assistant.
That is true. So if I didn't hear from you during the week, I wouldn't think anything of it.
Right.
But if you don't show up to record when we've said we're going to, then obviously that's a cause for concern because you're breaking the pattern.
Exactly. Yeah. You might be a little alarmed.
I think I would be very alarmed. Rosa Walker contacted the police in early August and asked them to do a welfare check. The family left a carton of milk on the counter, ketchup on the stove, and abandoned their pet hamster in its cage. Dresses were hung over open doors. Clothing was stuffed in boxes inside a closet. The garage door handle was in the open position. A light was left on in the bathroom, and the thermostat was set to 75 degrees. All right, so a couple of things to discuss.
Yeah.
75 seems pretty high to me.
For Florida, but
Florida.
maybe not.
Maybe they liked it hot. I don't know. What really jumps out at me above all else is the hamster. My daughters both had hamsters. They loved them so much. They took care of them. They would never have just gone off for a long period of time and either not taken the hamster or put something in place for someone to take care of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Neighbors first noticed something was wrong when they saw that the grass was overgrown in the Browns' front yard. They also noticed that they hadn't seen the children in a while. So again, we're talking about patterns, right? The grass is cut every so often.
Now it's not.
And now it's not. The children play out in the yard all the time.
Now we don't see them.
And now we haven't seen them. According to the St. Lucie News Tribune, Corporal Charles Johnson said during an August 16th press conference, "We found the house to be unlocked and windows open, indicating they had left abruptly. The refrigerator was completely full of food. Clothing was in place in the closets. There was a hamster in the dining room in a cage. It was dead." So, that's sad.
It is sad.
Right? For anybody who's had a pet like that. Now, I get flack sometimes for talking about a full refrigerator or somebody going to the grocery and buying a whole bunch of food and then voluntarily disappearing the next day.
Yeah.
Because my thought is always, why would you do that if you knew you were going to leave?
Well, same here. I think the same thing.
Now, some people have given me grief over that, saying, well, it doesn't mean that. And I'm not saying it means it every time.
No.
I'm just saying, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, if you're saying they left abruptly, then there's really not much to read into a full refrigerator of food.
No. But if it's planned,
then you would question it.
Yeah, why would you spend the money? Why would you spend your time? Unless you just want to appear normal to everybody around you before you decide to go missing.
Yeah, and if it was planned and this was not, we got to get out of the house right this second, then you would think, you lock the door, you pack some clothes.
Yeah.
So I think they're making an issue out of the fact that all of the clothing is in the closets, obviously the hamster, which we talked about. One of the family's cars was found at a local repair shop. It had been there since July. The other vehicle, a 1981 Buick Skylark, was missing. According to the St. Lucie News Tribune, on August 15th, James Brown called a female friend from a payphone outside a Jacksonville motel. James told his friend he had left and was on his way to an overseas job. He told her that the house was unlocked and she could take anything she wanted. He also said he had his sons Barry and Brandon with him. When she asked about Carolyn and Sheketah, James said they were, quote, out there. And I don't know, if you're this friend, how you take that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to take it either.
They were out there.
Out there.
I mean, out there somewhere, but I don't know.
Right.
Where?
Or out there where I plan on going ahead of time. I don't know.
Well, and I think you also have to kind of analyze hey, the house is unlocked. You can take anything you want. Well, why is it that I can do that?
Yeah. Why can I just take anything I want?
Nobody's planning on coming back. Your wife doesn't want this stuff. Your kid, you know what I'm saying? That whole conversation doesn't make sense. And obviously it's going to be analyzed.
Yeah, I think it has to.
Initially, the police did not treat the disappearance as a criminal case. According to the St. Lucie News Tribune, Police Chief O.H. Schlesselman said on August 17th, 1985, "We've no idea what happened. There's an absence of everything. The only indicator we have is the father's phone call where he indicated he and the boys were in Jacksonville and he was leaving. As for the whereabouts of the mother and daughter, there isn't even speculation." Detective H.W. Schmall said, "We're just pursuing leads as they become available to us. It was the suspicious manner in which the family left the house. The parents appear to be well educated and responsible financially, medically, and in their personal lives. There's no indication of substance abuse. The way they left the house and have had no contacts with the family network except for one call is strange. Detective Schmall said that they would know more on the 18th when Carolyn was supposed to show up for work. If she didn't, they planned to shift into high gear.
Well, I understand what he's saying. Look, this is a family where it looks like the spouses have decided to go in different directions. He's taken the boys with him, and she's taken their daughter. We can't confirm because we haven't talked to her, but we don't see a reason to pursue this at this time.
But the next day, if she doesn't show up for work, that changes things.
Yeah, now the narrative has changed, right? I like how they say we got to shift it into high gear.
From what? Low gear?
Yeah.
Right now we're in low gear.
We're low gear.
According to the St. Lucie News Tribune, on August 21st, the Port St. Lucie police held a second press conference. The police said they were cutting back on the investigation until they got solid leads.
So what happened to the shift in high gear?
Well, if they did shift, it was for only, 2 or 3 days? Because obviously Carolyn didn't show up for work. On the 18th, that was what was supposed to cause the shift. Now by the 21st, they're saying, hey, we're cutting back.
Yeah.
Because we don't have any leads, and until we get some, there's not much we can do. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Hey, TCAT fans, whether you love true crime or comedies, celebrity interviews, news, or even motivational speakers, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue, right? And guess what? Now you can call the shots on your auto insurance too. Enter the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. The Name Your Price tool puts you in charge of your auto insurance by working just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, then they'll show you a variety of coverages that fit within your budget, giving you options. Now that's something you'll want to press play on. It's easy to start a quote, and you'll be able to choose the best option for you fast. It's just one of the many ways you can save with Progressive Insurance. Quote today at Progressive.com to try the Name Your Price tool for yourself and join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. The police displayed cut-up credit cards and identification found during a search of the house on the 21st. A purse and glasses believed to belong to Carolyn were also found. According to the Charlie Project, one of the rooms in the house had a fresh coat of paint, which was covering up bloodstains on the wall. Okay, so now we've got information that is leading us in a completely different direction.
Yeah, I think your thought process has changed.
Right, from they left either together, separately, whatever it was, to go do something. They don't have to tell anybody where they're going, to something very bad possibly happened inside this house. During the search, the police found a receipt for a gun dated June 21st. The receipt indicated that James Brown purchased a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol and a box of long rifle rounds. The gun was not found in the house. So obviously, Gibbs, police have to think that the purchase of this gun, the timing of it, is questionable, suspicious.
Oh, no other way around it, right? He bought the gun towards the end of June, and they haven't been seen since July.
Right. Less than a month before everybody's gone missing, and the gun's not found in the house. The police were unable to get a search warrant, so they had to canvass the home under the suspicion of the executive vice president of the company that managed the rental. An assistant state attorney denied a request for a search warrant because the police didn't have evidence that a crime was committed by James or Carolyn Brown. The Browns started renting their house in August of 1982. The family always paid their rent on time. The company representative noted they usually kept the house clean, but it was messier than normal during the search. Their lease expired on August 15th, 1985. The realty company started eviction proceedings against the family for failure to pay rent.
Well, they're not going to pay rent because they're not there anymore.
Well, and the company wants to get paid, so
Sure.
They want to be able to rent it to someone else. All of that makes sense. On August 23rd, the Savannah, Georgia police announced that the family car, the 1981 Buick Skylark, had been found in a parking lot near the Oglethorpe Mall. The car was seen on July 18th. Employees at a nearby carpet store called the police after noticing that the car didn't have a license plate and the keys were still in the ignition. There was $30 in cash in the glove compartment, more money inside a change purse, a Bible, plain white t-shirts, a small notebook, and a tennis racket and tennis balls in the car. It appeared that the trunk had been pried open recently. Detective Steve Hood from the Savannah PD said that there was fresh damage to the car and that the case was unusual because most stolen cars didn't have money left behind, and people typically choose to abandon cars in remote areas.
I mean, that's a good point. You know, if someone stole this car, why would there be money in the glove compartment, money in a change purse?
Yeah, most thieves are going to rifle through the car, take anything of value. They're already stealing the car.
Yeah.
So why not steal anything of value inside it?
And why would they dump the car at that location versus maybe a location where the car won't be found right away and maybe they don't have to worry about being seen dumping the car?
Well, I think there's two things. I think you're saying them both. You're taking a big chance, dumping a car in a parking lot, a chance of being seen. I don't know if they would have had security cameras there at that point in time, but maybe. So you're taking a couple of different chances that you really wouldn't have to. I'm sure you can find an area in Georgia that's rural and just dump the car somewhere where nobody would see it. Detective Hood identified the owners of the car using the VIN and sent a letter to the family, notifying them their car had been found. However, the Browns' mail was routed to Rosa Walker's home. She received the letter in August and notified the local police. So, I mean, talking about Rosa, Carolyn's mom, she's got to be worried out of her mind.
Oh,
already. Now she gets this letter about the car.
But yeah, she gets this letter in the mail about the car. She's got to be freaking out because where's her daughter? Where's her grandkids?
She hasn't talked to them. She hasn't heard from them in a number of months. James Brown was found at a public shelter in Savannah, Georgia on the morning of September 11th, 1985. A worker for the shelter called the police when she saw Brown's picture in a newspaper article about the missing family. The police reportedly searched for bodies in Palm Beach County that same day. And according to the St. Lucie News Tribune, the new developments came from disclosures made by James Brown. But authorities were vague about what information he disclosed. Port St. Lucie Police Corporal Chuck Johnson said the Savannah police gave him some information to our investigation of an extremely sensitive nature, which we can neither confirm nor deny at this time. Brown has referred to members of his family. We don't know if he's telling the truth about them or not. So as happens a lot, the police aren't, giving out a ton of information. But what a strange turn of events, right? The family goes missing. The car is found in Savannah, Georgia. All of a sudden, the dad, James Brown, is found at a public shelter in Savannah, Georgia. And apparently he starts telling police what happened to his family. They just won't give the information out. But I think when you say extremely sensitive nature, all right, you could take that a couple of different ways.
You sure could.
First of all, it could be damaging to our investigation, so we don't want to give it out.
Right.
Or it's really bad news that this family is no longer alive and sensitive in that way.
Yeah, maybe they have to vet it out still and eventually be able to share that information with the public.
A spokesman for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department said that Port St. Lucie requested them to check for buried bodies in two areas in Palm Beach County, West Palm Beach and Belle Glade. Corporal Johnson told the press the Savannah police notified Port St. Lucie on September 10th that James Brown filed a police report with them on July 18th, claiming he was shot during an alleged robbery. James was using the alias Demetrius Jones and was hitchhiking through the city. He was shot once behind the left ear with a small caliber handgun and was hospitalized for 2 days. Now, the police were skeptical about the alleged robbery because it took place in a neighborhood with a very low crime rate. There were also no witnesses and no loss of money. The robbery also reportedly took place the same day the Savannah police found the family's car. All right, so they're not sure he's telling the truth.
But they got things to work with.
Yeah, they have to question. I mean, number one, why is he using an alias? Why is he going by Demetrius Jones? Why is he hitchhiking through the city when his car is in a parking lot in the same city, right? Things just don't seem to be adding up. Why did somebody shoot him during what he was calling a robbery, but nothing was taken? You can see why they might be skeptical.
Sure.
On September 12th, the Port St. Lucie and Savannah police announced that they linked James Brown to the apparent murders of his wife and children. They confirmed that searches took place in Palm Beach County and Brunswick, Georgia, for the bodies of Carolyn and the children based on information given to them by James Brown. But no bodies were found. The police were told that Carolyn and Brandon were put in West Palm Beach or Belglade, Florida, after they were killed. Corporal Chuck Johnson said at a news conference that these two deaths reportedly occurred in the home in Port St. Lucie, but there was nothing to verify this information. Johnson also said that Sheketah and Barry were reportedly killed at an unspecified location near Brunswick, Georgia.
So it sounds like they're still trying to iron out some details.
Well, I think at the very least, they're trying to substantiate his claims. And these are very bold claims.
They are.
I mean, these are, I killed my family, but they're not seeing evidence of it in the house. Now, we did mention the one wall that was freshly painted. Savannah authorities confirmed that James indicated he killed his family and that Carolyn and Brandon were disposed of in Palm Beach County and Belglade, and Sheketah and Barry were killed in Georgia. So we're getting the same story from both police departments. Although the full details weren't public knowledge at that time, James admitted to murdering his entire family and attempting to end his own life. He told the police that he shot Carolyn in bed at their home in Port St. Lucie. Their son Brandon was sleeping next to her. He smothered Brandon with a pillow and disposed of the bodies in a field in Palm Beach County, Florida. Then on July 17th, he drove Sheketah and Barry to Brunswick, Georgia. He shot Barry in the head and shot Sheketah in the face, then disposed of the bodies on Interstate 95.
How do you do that, man? Any of that, but especially smother your 2-year-old and then turn around and shoot your one boy in the back of the head, but then shoot your daughter in the face looking at her at the time?
Yeah, but how is this making sense? If you shoot someone lying in bed, there is going to be evidence of that all over that bed.
Yeah, not just the back wall that was repainted. You know, they said there was a wall that was painted. I'm assuming that's the wall.
Maybe. I don't know.
Right, we don't know, but let's assume that's the wall. But what about the bed? What about the pillow, the sheets, the blankets, all that stuff?
Well, we don't know if that stuff was still there. Was it disposed of? Was it burned? The one thing I would say is that, as we've seen time and time again, it's very hard to clean up a crime scene, especially when you've shot someone and not miss something that the police will later somehow find. According to the Charlie Project, the police conducted extensive searches of the areas James listed in his confession, but found no bodies and nothing leading to the family's location. Some investigators believed James lied about where he disposed of the bodies. And you could see why some might believe that. If he's giving you these areas and you're checking out these areas and you don't find anything. Now, I get it. Interstate 95 is probably a pretty long road, but he's telling you a pretty specific
part of
that road. James Brown was arrested on September 12th and charged with filing a false report. We talked about it, right? James initially told police that his injury resulted from a robbery. but then later confessed that it was an attempt to end his own life. So they charged him for filing a false police report. James also led the police to a small caliber revolver, which may have been the gun he purchased on June 21st. The gun was empty when the police found it. The Savannah police described James as coherent. He admitted what he did, and he even seemed remorseful. On September 17th, St. Lucie County Sheriff's deputies dragged a lake near the family home, but again, found no bodies. So, I think we got to take a step back here and just kind of talk about what's going on up to this point.
Right.
We have 4 members of a family missing. The father has told a number of different stories, but one is that he murdered his entire family.
And he's told them where he has buried them.
But they've not
location.
But they've not been able to locate the bodies.
Right.
You have the Savannah police, kind of describing him as being together, being all there, even being remorseful.
Right.
But you have some police not believing, what he's telling them.
And if he is telling the truth, he's handed them the murder weapon, the gun.
Which is great if you find the bodies that were shot. Without the bodies,
doesn't mean anything.
It really doesn't. I don't know what you're trying to match. In September 1985, the state attorney's office in Florida filed a warrant charging James with the murders of Carolyn and Brandon inside the Port St. Lucie house. Prosecutors waited to bring James to Florida until he served his time in Georgia after being convicted of filing a false police report. Okay, so he was convicted. How long do you do for filing a false police report?
I don't know.
How serious is that? I know it's illegal.
Maybe that's a 30-day thing.
What seems to maybe have been quite a bit longer, because he wasn't flown back to Florida to face a homicide charge until April 23rd of 1986.
It's a long time.
So maybe it was more like 6 months or something like that. He was also a suspect in the deaths of Sheketah and Barry. After James was booked on a homicide charge, the state had 21 days to bring their case to a grand jury to determine if there was enough evidence for formal murder charges. 3 court-appointed doctors evaluated James Brown and found him competent to stand trial in late May 1986. On June 19th of that year, James Brown was indicted by a grand jury for the murders of Carolyn and Brandon Brown. The judge ordered another exam to test for competency to stand trial. On July 29th, James's attorney filed notice that he suffered from paranoid schizophrenia and was clinically insane when he allegedly killed his wife and son. A detailed evaluation report by psychologist Sheldon Rifkin was filed in court. The Rifkin report stated that James was probably insane at the time of the murders, but he could assist in his defense. So that's an interesting statement. If you can assist in your defense, then you're competent to stand trial, right? But he goes a step further and says, even though that's true, he was probably insane.
At the time of the murders.
At the time of the murders. And those are 2 completely different things.
They are, and it's probably exactly what the defense wanted to hear.
Yeah, right. He can stand trial, but he was insane at the time of the murders. According to the St. Lucie News Tribune, James told Sheldon Rifkin, "I felt an urge to die and take my people with me. I don't know why, I just didn't want to live. I figured that I wasn't any good to them, wasn't helping them in everyday life. I couldn't do enough for them." According to the report, on the morning of the murders, James went to the living room, and during the time he was in the living room, he states he was not thinking about any specific action or thought, but that it just came to me to end it. The paper went on to say James picked up a gun and went into the bedroom where he killed Carolyn and Brandon. James Brown told Rifkin that Carolyn wanted him to kill her, but she didn't say so in so many words. He said Carolyn wanted to die because they both had a venereal disease that was not cured. James said, "We had problems and sores, problems with our body." James indicated that the problems involved odors in my nose and mouth. I couldn't get rid of it. We went to doctors, but it just got worse and I couldn't take it no more. According to the Miami Herald, James feared he infected his family with syphilis. Despite there being no evidence that he had syphilis, James believed he got the disease from his first wife. So, I just want to analyze this a little bit. It seems as though at first, he's telling this psychiatrist or this psychologist, I didn't want to live anymore and I wanted to take my family with me because I wasn't doing anything for them. I couldn't support them.
Right. Couldn't keep a job.
And we've heard this before.
Sure we have.
From family annihilators.
Yeah.
But then he kind of almost transitions to, well, Carolyn wanted me to kill her because we had these problems
that we were suffering from.
So I guess my question is, which one was it? Or was it both? One, the other, or neither?
I don't know if he knows. I think maybe he had a lot of things going on.
Maybe. And maybe he did suffer from some things. The one thing I will say is none of this is really making a lot of sense to me. So either that's because he's waffling all over the place and telling different versions of the story because he wants this mental health expert to think that, he has mental health issues, or he really does have mental health issues, or he's just lying. I don't know. There's a lot of different scenarios at play here.
Didn't back in the day, syphilis drove people to do some crazy things?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it was, but I have this thought that untreated syphilis drove people mad.
Yeah.
But in 1985, I think syphilis was treatable to the point where that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if there was a cure for it. I really don't know much about syphilis. I know you know a lot about it, but I don't know that it would cause what we're thinking of like many years ago.
Yeah, that's because I used to research it when I did all my free work to help people out.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Things. So James says he went to doctors, and if that's true, there should have been evidence of whether or not he had syphilis.
Yeah, so I don't know if the paper saying there was no evidence that he had syphilis means that the police checked with these doctors and they didn't know anything about it or what. I don't know. It simply said there was no evidence that he had it. After James shot Carolyn, the other two children came to the door and they asked what the noise was. James told them that a TV had exploded and they left to make breakfast. He took Sheketah and Barry to Georgia after he disposed of Carolyn and Brandon's bodies. James said he suffered auditory and visual hallucinations after he shot Carolyn, and this continued until he was arrested and put on medication. According to the St. Lucie News Tribune, Rifkin reported that James had been seriously disturbed for a long time, but avoided detection by isolating himself from others. James Brown could adapt appropriate expressions and feelings in social situations. Despite having a master's degree, James scored low on IQ tests. Rifkin's report said that James struggled to control and suppress his underlying feelings and did so at the expense of cognitive and emotional resources.
I'm not really surprised that he has a master's degree, but scored low on an IQ test. I think that can happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think that everybody that has a master's is at your Mensa level. I mean, a master's degree is a great accomplishment. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think you have to be super, super smart to get one. You got to put in some work.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much it correlates to IQ necessarily. The other thing that I always think about is, could someone snow a mental health expert? Could they purposefully mess up an IQ test? Could they dupe a professional by saying certain things or acting a certain way? And I would have to think that people could do it.
I would think so.
Now, I'm not saying he is.
No.
But is it a possibility? You got to ask that. You got to keep it in your mind. On August 6th, Assistant State Attorney Tom Walsh requested that 2 mental health experts of his choosing examined James Brown. By late October 1986, 3 different psychiatrists had concluded that James Brown was insane. At the time he allegedly killed his family, Dr. Donald Schultz, requested by the prosecution to examine James, filed a report agreeing with Dr. Rifkin's findings. Schultz noted in his report that James's father spent 8 years in the Florida State Mental Hospital after trying to hurt his wife. James's paternal grandmother suffered from mental illness, and his brother was incarcerated for shooting his wife. That's a lot of wife shooting.
It is.
In one family.
Sounds like we got some genetic stuff going on there.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where my mind was going as well. Schultz and Rifkin agreed that James was obsessed with the idea that he gave his family syphilis and then began having delusions of voices telling him to kill his family. But these delusions got better when he started taking medication in jail. So I thought this was interesting that a psychiatrist for the state came up with the exact same findings.
Yeah.
So I said, could you snow one mental health professional? I think you could.
You could.
Does it get harder to snow 2 or 3?
I think so.
I think so.
Unless they're really lazy, I think it's going to be difficult.
I think it is. The more people that you have do what I would call an unbiased evaluation. Because you can make an argument that people are biased,
right,
whether they're working for the defense or for the state. But this is a state psychiatrist. And let's call him a defense psychiatrist. I don't know if he really is or not, but they're agreeing. So I think you throw bias out the window at that point, because obviously if they were biased, they would have differing opinions. The second psychiatrist requested by the prosecution, Dr. Frank Travado, at this point hadn't filed his report, but it was said he was 99% certain of James' insanity at the time of the murders, but he wasn't as certain that James didn't remember where he put the bodies. Because I think that's a kind of a big thing in this case.
It is. We need the bodies. So where are they?
Both the prosecution and the defense said that they might close the case in November by agreeing that James was insane at the time of the murders. On November 20th, 1986, James Brown was sentenced to an indefinite term of confinement in the Florida State Hospital. James pleaded innocent by reason of insanity to murder charges for killing Carolyn and Brandon Brown. The hearing was short. James told the judge he understood he was giving up his right to a jury trial. Georgia authorities chose not to charge James with the murders of Sheketah and Barry because authorities weren't even sure where the murders occurred.
That's a good point. Was it in Florida? Was it in Georgia? We don't know. And did he even do it? We don't know.
No bodies, right? No crime scene. Where's the crime scene?
Right.
But I'm sure this is not what the prosecution thought was going to happen, right? When they set out, my thought is they assumed that their psychiatrists were going to be able to refute what Dr. Rifkin had said. But when they didn't, I don't know what other choice they had. I think they were going to have an uphill battle in getting a jury to find this guy guilty. Because, if they don't call their psychiatrist, the defense is going to call them.
Right.
Now you got 3 psychiatrists essentially testifying for the defense and no one refuting them. That's not going to go well. James Brown spent 9 years in the Florida State Mental Hospital. In 1995, officials at the hospital determined he had recovered enough to be released to a halfway house where he remained for 19 months. The judge determined James could be released despite him being arrested the week before during a dispute at the halfway house. In July 1996, officials wrote to the court recommending that James Brown be transferred out of the halfway house, but they said they were uncomfortable with his plan to live with his sister because they didn't believe he was fully recovered. James was required to take medication and to attend daily therapy as part of his release. On January 16th, 1997, a judge decided that James Brown could live with his relatives in Tallahassee, Florida. The judge made his decision after 2 different psychiatrists determined James was not a danger to himself or others. According to the Charlie Project, James was free for several years, but in 2005, he was back in prison. James threatened to kill a bank clerk during a robbery.
So he did basically 10 years in the mental hospital. They deemed him good enough to be released, and he's out for a while. Looks like he pretty much lives a normal life, doesn't get caught doing anything wrong. Then all of a sudden in 2005, he's robbing a bank.
Yeah, and I said several years, but it's actually more than several. I'd say it's more like 7 or 8 years before this bank robbery. Now, that's obviously going to land you in prison, right? A bank robbery. On top of that, you threaten to kill one of the bank clerks. But does that seem strange that he was able to live on the outside for quite a number of years?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's like this happened. Why? We don't know.
No, we don't know what was going on in his life at that time that he felt that he needed to do this.
We don't know if he was still taking his medication. Had he been doing therapy? You know, I have so many questions in this case, Gibbs. It's unbelievable. You know, at the end of the day, Carolyn, Sheketah, Barry, and Brandon have never been found, and they are still classified as missing persons. Age progression photos of Sheketah, Brandon, and Barry were uploaded to NamUs in 2012, depicting the children as adults. The Brown family have been missing for more than 30 years. And I think for most people who have looked into this case, it's more likely than not that there's only one person, James Brown, that knows what really happened to them. Now, the question is, was he really, as a number of psychiatrists determined, insane at the time that he did what he did? And what exactly did he do? I mean, it's hard to think that these individuals are alive 30 years later.
Sure.
The more plausible explanation is that he did murder his wife and children. He disposed of their bodies somewhere. Did he know what he was doing? Did he not know what he was doing? Did he not understand that it was wrong?
Right.
Did he not know the difference between right and wrong? I mean, those are all questions that I have. It's hard to argue, though, with 3 different psychiatrists.
It really is.
We've done cases where, you know, the defense psychiatrist says one thing, the state's psychiatrist says something completely different. And that is what usually happens, right? That's what we normally see.
Right.
When in the world have you ever seen this, where 2 state psychiatrists and the defense, they all agree?
Yeah, they're all aligned together.
I don't know that I've ever seen it. And so, you know, hard for me to say that they're wrong. 3 different people.
I think you have to go with the flow on that one.
But it's still such a mystery.
It is. I mean, he's given details of where the bodies were.
But they weren't found.
But they weren't found. So was he telling the truth, or did he just not really remember exactly?
Well, I will say this. When he talked about Carolyn and Brandon, he said he buried them in a field in Palm Beach County. How many fields are in Palm Beach County?
Right.
Was it even in Palm Beach County?
Right. Could he have been wrong? Maybe he thought it was in Palm Beach County, but wasn't.
Could it be a field in a different county? And then when you're talking about, you know, I-95, well, like I said, obviously a pretty major road,
Sure.
pretty long. Could he have been completely wrong about what part of the interstate, how far off? I mean, obviously it couldn't have been right by the road. Thousands and thousands of cars would have passed it every day.
Yeah.
So somebody would have seen 2 bodies. It had to have been, you know, way off the road, somewhere where passing cars wouldn't have seen it. And when you're talking about that length of road, if you're substantially off,
Big difference.
yeah, I mean, it would be much harder to find the body. So I don't know. This is a case that, you know, just really perplexes me.
Yeah. You know, for me, the sad part is if what he said happened, his kids, his wife. This is your husband, your father, the ultimate trust.
The protector.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if he wasn't in his right state of mind, the other thing that I didn't talk about was you mentioned it, but he was in the Florida State Mental Hospital for 9 or 10 years.
Yeah.
That's a pretty long time.
It is.
Now, if they'd have let him go after 6 months or 30 days or something like that, maybe there would be more to question. That's a really, that's a pretty good chunk of time, not to pay for murder.
No.
But to be held in a state hospital.
So they felt that you were okay to be on your own.
Yeah. It wasn't like, all of a sudden he was okay.
Right.
So, I think that maybe lends some credence to the determination that the psychiatrist made.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this is a case that, may divide people, and that's okay. People are going to have their own opinions on, was he really insane at the time that the murders were committed? To me, there's very little doubt that he murdered his family.
No, I think he did. And I have to side with the psychologist.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't always do that.
No, I know.
I'm very skeptical of some of these mental health professionals when they're testifying for one side or the other, because there's bias. And I said it, I'm throwing bias out the window because these people are working for different sides and yet all came to the same conclusion. So to me, it seems much more likely that they're correct.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's it for our episode on the Brown family disappearance. If you have any relevant information in this case, you can contact the Port St. Lucie Police Department at 561-871-5000. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hi, this is Maddie from Friendly, Ohio. This is only the 4th time I've tried re-recording this, so sorry for your voicemail box. Anywho, I was listening to your unsolved episode of the Nancy and Joey murder, and I was listening, and at about minute 32 and a half, you gave me a good chuckle because you said, of course, she would want her kidnapper caught. Well, you actually said, of course, she would want him killed, and I was like, I don't think that's what he meant to say, so I just thought it was so funny. But yeah, I've been listening for about 2 years now. I started off with TCAT, and then I moved over to TCAT Unsolved, which I never thought I was going to do, but I was like, oh my God, I got to have more. So I finally did. You'll definitely give me some right days. I'm a dog trainer, so I'm always in the car traveling to clients, so it really helps pass all that time. But keep doing what you're doing, and keep your head on a swivel, and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
All right, love it. Now, I don't know that she said which of us made that mistake. Did she?
She did not.
But it's
probably you.
It's hard to believe that either one of us would say something incorrectly. We only do it like 10 times an episode.
We never.
And sometimes when you're riffing just off the top, you do say things wrong.
You do. It can happen.
You mix up words, you say something that if you sat down and you thought about it, you would obviously know that what you're saying is not correct. But in the moment, sometimes your brain doesn't work that way.
That's true.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. It's Sammy. I signed up for Patreon a couple months ago, and I never remember hearing a shout out. I am still back in 2018 trying to catch up on all of your episodes. So I'm still catching up. I have a lot to do, but every day I consider it hanging out with you guys as I'm getting ready for work or driving to work or driving home. I truly love you guys. I listen to you every day. You guys make me laugh, but also your podcast is just so interesting. I've even gotten my boyfriend listening to true crime as well. So thank you guys for all you do. I will keep listening, and eventually I'll catch up and we'll be in real time together. But for now, stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
All right. Appreciate the voicemail. I don't know if anybody heard Gibby coughing at the end there. He was trying to hold it in.
I was dying.
He
sorry.
He just couldn't do it. So, she touched on a point, Gibbs, and I was actually emailing with somebody today, and they were saying something similar, along the lines of us helping them get through things, us kind of being with them, almost like friends in their ear or something like that. And I told the person back in an email, I'd love to hear that. I never thought about that when we started the podcast. Obviously, we didn't think about a lot of things, but that for sure is something that I never thought I would get. But every time we hear it, it makes me feel so good. Like if we're helping people out in any way or whatever it is, it's just an awesome feeling that I wish everybody could experience. I don't know how to give it to everybody, but it really is a wonderful feeling.
It is
warm, all that stuff. But so appreciate the voicemail very much. All right, buddy, that's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
All month long on Pluto TV, stream the biggest Tyler Perry movies free. Watch your favorites like Medea's Witness Protection and Medea's Big Happy Family. Join Tyler Perry as he goes on a couples retreat with Sharon Leal in Why Did I Get Married? Or Idris Elba and Gabrielle Union in the Tyler Perry directed film Daddy's Little Girls. Plus, Pluto TV has hundreds of channels with thousands more movies and TV shows. Available on live and on demand. Download the free Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming now. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.